Today we're going to discuss page 7, and the key point is the Carmelit. As we explained that there are 4 different Reshut, so one of them is the Carmelit, and we need to zoom in to see the difference between Carmelit and Reshut HaYachid, Carmelit and Reshut Harabim, Carmelit and the status of Makom Ptur, when we reach a point that Carmelit has some type of similarity and why it's considering as a different Reshut. So we basically zoom in on the whole concept of Carmelit today. 8 lines from the top of the page, page 7. Carmelit. So we said in the Mishnah there are four different Reshuyot, and we explained earlier that within the Reshuyot there is a definition of Carmelit. So Atu Kulu Nam Lav Carmelit Ninu. So all this other area that we mentioned is not considering a Carmelit, which means when we discussed earlier and we said that the Yam, the water, and valley, and Istevanit, it's all considering a Reshut. So why we don't call it Carmelit? Because each independence, it's basically a definition of Carmelit. So why we need to use the word Carmelit in different words while they're all meaning the same thing? So Ki'ata Ravdim Yamar B'Yochanan. Ki'ata is a definition for someone who comes from Eretz Israel to Bavel. Usually it's the definition for Ki'ata, if someone come to our Beit HaMidrash in Babylon. So Ki'ata Ravdim Yamar B'Yochanan. Ravdim was a student of Rabbi Yochanan. He brought all the halachot from his Rebbe. He said the reason that we repeat the Carmelit Lo Nitzrecha La Lekeren Zavit Hasmucha L'Reshut Harabim. We speak here about Carmelit that involve in Keren Zavit. Keren Zavit is like a corner that it's part of the public domain. The Afal Gab the Zimnin the Dacha Keberabim ve'Ail Legava Kevan de Lo Nichat Hashmishtei Ki Carmelit Haba, which means there is a heavy traffic that goes in and out all the times, but because Rashi explained here that because there is a situation that in order to enter one have to step to that direction outside of his private domain in order to reach that domain. So is that it's like those corners that it's called Keren Zavit, those separate reference. Now Ki'atar Amar Avdimi Amar Rabbi Yochanan Beina Amudim Nidon Kekarmelit. So Rashi here explained Beina Amudim. What does that mean? Shayu Amudim Barchava ותולים בהם התגרים פרקמטיה וגם מסתברות היו לפניהם ליישב בעדם התגרים. זאת אומרת that it was a place. Remember we talked yesterday about the Mishkan and it's around the tabernacle, so it was a special steps. So it was a area that that it was a Amudim Mefuzarim, is a different pillars that goes around, and Rashi explained that it's hard for people to go around, and therefore it's not considering as a Reshut Harabim and Nidon Kekarmelit. So those pillars are considered a Carmelit, not a public domain. Maitama. What's the reason? Afal Gav de Darse Barabim. Even many people pass by that. Because you don't have a straight line, they need to go to circumnavigate, to circumvent the issues of all those pillars in between. Kekarmelit Damya. So we don't call it Reshut Harabim, we call it Carmelit. Amar Rabbi Zera Amar Rabbi Yehuda Itzteba Shelifnei HaTalmudim. It was put a block at the front of those pillars. Again, you don't Kekarmelit. We consider that as a Carmelit. Leman Damar Ben Amudim. Who's Leman Damar? Is Rabbi Yochanan. According to Rabbi Yochanan, who said that the area between the pillars is considered Carmelit. Kol sheken itztaba. So for sure you're considering that block at the front of that as that it's not a public domain. Leman Damar itztaba, by the one who said that this block front of the pillar is considered Carmelit. Itztaba de lo nichat hashmishtei, because people sit there, right? So this it's only correct only if it's a block that you use a public, because it's much convenient. But between, so it's basically not a Carmelit, not but only Reshut Harabim. So he said, no, So it's not considered a Carmelit, but it's just a Reshut Arabim, public domain. Lishna Achrina, another option. Aval ben amudim, but between those pillars, the zimnin bedarse l'arabim, that because it's sometimes a situation that people walk in between, kershut arabim dama. So we're not considering it as a Carmelit, which is right, a general definition of Reshut Arabim. Omar Rabba bar Shel, Omar Rav Chizda, leveina skufa birshut Arabim. This is a Mishnah in the beginning of the Eruvin. They speak about 3 by 3 width, because the size of that brick, it's changed. But in general, we speak 3 by 3. So he said, so that brick, it's standing upright in the public domain. Vezarak vetach befanea. He took something. Let's call later the lavut. He took something that is stuck, and he threw it to, so it's basically reach it and stick
to the wall.
Stick to the wall. So he said Chayav. So he's basically the person who did it is liable. Why? Because he's basically transferring 4 Amot in Reshut Arabim, because we hold that item as someone who's nach Reshut Arabim, was something that it's permanent, but al gaba patu. But if that object is the top of the brick, is exempt. So Rashi explained here. First of all, Chayav. So he said zarak, which is teat or te'ena, or it's a fig or something like that. So if you reach the ceiling, it's different. But dalet amoda v'kmunat v'cheshut arbim, the kolam v'cheshut arbim. So Rashi said that because that's small chefetz, it's considering a sanach b'reshut arbim, it's step in reshut arbim. So therefore, it's 3 tefachim above ground. So it's not considering part of public domain, but it's like in a sense is a separate domain. So because you don't have 4 by 4, it's considering a makom ptur. So therefore, when that item is basically get down at the top of that brick, so therefore he is exempt. We consider it as a makom ptur. Abai v'Rava d'amrit Ravayu, Abai v'Rava both said, והוא שגבוה 3 דלא דרסה ברבים. So all of that apply when it's above. If someone throw item 4 amot in Reshut Rabim and is lay on the brick that it stand in a public domain, he is exempt. So it says because most of the people who pass by that domain, they don't step on that while they're walking. So therefore, it's not considering a part of Reshut Rabim. But if it's not in a size of 3 tefachim, it's not this high, so people maybe pass by while they are walking. So therefore, it's not considering as independent entity, but it's part of the public domain. So if someone throw that 4 amot, and it's so he is liable. But all of that apply if the brick are standing. But he said, "Aval hizmei vehegei." So, but the situation that the object is brambles or thorn bushes, which means that it's like those thorns, or in Hebrew you call it barkan. It's like you see around roses, those thorns. So one who throw it is exempt. Af al gav the lo gvio shlosha, even they don't have the 3 tefachim, because even that is in that size, people who don't pass by because they don't have any chance of liability. So it's not considering something that Bateil karka. So and therefore it's a separate entity. V'chia baraba amar, V'chia baraba said afilu hizme v'geihe. If someone throw 4 amot in a public domain, he is liable, even that item is landed on those type of thrown, that it's not in a size of 3 tefachim of 3 hand cubit. Aval tzoa lo. So you have to know that the tzoah, the excrement, it talk about something that is glue. It's large as the glue. So because people don't walk there, so it's not considering 4 amot. V'Ravashi Amar, Ravashi disagrees, a third opinion. Afilu tzoah, that if someone throw in the public domain, he is liable, even if that item stop on the top of this type of excrement. So he is basically, that is not 3 tefachim from the ground, so he's still liable. So basically Rav Ashi disagree of both, of Abaye Rava and Chiya Barav, because he hold that everything that is within the Shlosha Tefachim, above the ground, it's not independent entities, and that's, by the way, the Meir and Rashba. The Mordechai hold that the first dispute, it's a matter of tzoah, that excrement, that if you pass by it, it's very large. But most of the Rishonim say that it's lavud, is the din of lavud is like it's attached, and therefore, if it's attached, it's like attached to the ground, and therefore you hold it the same as something that it's mechubar, that it's fully attached to public domain, and therefore, so it's part of the ground. Lavud in general, it's part of the ground. I tried earlier to find in dictionary the proper translation for the word lavud. The best I get is the word felting, which I don't think it's the proper one. But in general definition, it's hard for me to translate, but it's when it's became an attachment, it's even that you can unglue it, but it's basically glued. So it's considering as part of the ground. It's like,
so it's stuck to the ground.
Stuck to the ground, so it's like, halachically we hold it as like part of the ground. Now we want to speak about the length, the size of the carmelit, how big, the length, width. So he said, Amar Rav Adi Rav Shila ki ata Rav Dimi leBavel. Again, when Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, so he said, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, he said the name of Israel, Rabbi Yochanan, En carmelit pchuta me'arba amot. So he said that the carmelit cannot be less than 4 tefachim wide. מארבעה טפחים, so 4 טפחים wide. ואמר רב ששת ותופסת עד 10, but רב ששת told that it's reached up to the height of 10 טפחים. So the Gemara explained and said, מה ותופסת עד 10? What does that mean that it's hold at the heights of 10? אילמדי כמחיצה 10. If you tell me that there is a petition that it's hold at 10 טפחים high, how they have a carmelit? So it's considering the same as carmelit. But if it doesn't have the 10 tefachim, lo have a carmelit, it's not whole carmelit. So because what do we hold? We hold carmelit, it's basically, maybe you think that it's only something that hold if you have a mechitzot, if 10 tefachim, it's like the same as we said yesterday in Karpaf, that they have a betza ta'im that you didn't circle it as a regular dwelling place. So place that they have a mechitza and 10 tefachim, it's not considering carmelit. We have a carmelit, but if you not considering carmelit, so then so you don't treat it as a carmelit. So how you said velo? So if that's really the reality, if it's a house that doesn't have 10 hand cubits, וקירויו משלימו ל10, which means if you take the house from the ground to the ceiling, and the ceiling, it's that one more, it's hold together as a 10. So basically the minute you have that, it's that house, it's hold as a Reshut היחיד, it's a private domain. Al gago mutar l'talel. If you carry on the top of the roof, so you can carry inside betocho, but inside the house, so it's a different story. And you can carry only inside the 4 cubits. So again, trace a situation that you have a house and you have at the top, so from the ground to the top you have 9. Let me try to paint something, so maybe it will help. But okay, let me use this one just for the sake of understanding. Let's say this is the house. So we have from here almost to here, but not to the top, 9. This roof, this top, is the 10th. So if someone did something on the roof is one thing, but if someone dig the 4 amot, up to 4 amot on the ground, in any spot in the house, so that's the limitation, because the mechitzot in the inside the house, it's not the 10 tefachim. So it means that the inside the house doesn't have the 10 tefachim. So therefore you treat it as a carmelit. So he said, Ela mai v'tofeset al sara. So what's Rav Sheshet hold that reaches the height of 10 tefachim? So he said the ad hasara hu de avya carmelit, because up to the 10 tefachim we hold that it's the same as carmelit. Lemala me'asara tefachim lo avya carmelit. If he succeeded more than 10 tefachim, so now it's already not the rule of carmelit. So if it's not a carmelit, it's only, so it's treated as a mekom ptur. So basically you hold it only in a certain not above that. Basically, the Pnei Yoshua elaborate on that. Again, we're running out of time, but I recommend it after reading here the Rashi, who explained that the whole length of explanation. He basically hold that above, like let's say above the roof and up, all that part is mekom ptur. Inside the property, within the 4 amot, that's the only location. Other than that, it's not. וכי אמר רב שמואל לרב יהודה, שיננה, he said to him, sharp answer לו, דאבה מילי שבתא למעלה מ10. So he said to him, you cannot handle the matter of the Ilchot Shabbat, the law of Shabbat, in the places that it's above the 10 tefachim from the ground. So what does that mean? למיין הלכתה, what he meant? So he said, אילא אם אין רשות היחיד למעלה מ10, if you tell me that is no such a thing, private domain, if it's above 10 tefachim. ואמר רב חיסדא said earlier, נעץ קנה ברשות היחיד וזרק ונח על גביו. If one stuck some pole in the ground of a רשות היחיד, of a private domain, and ונח על גביו, וזרק ונח על גביו, and they throw and it's landed at the top of the pole, אפילו גבוה מהמה, if it is 100 amot, Chayav is liable. Why? Because he's entered from the Reshut הרבים to Reshut היחיד, from public to the private domain. מפני שרשות היחיד לא עלה. If you remember in the early sessions we explained that when it's come to a private domain, the one who owns this private domain or have the responsibility on the private domain is basically hold above ground and below ground. Above ground is even the air space up to heaven, and below ground. So it means that Shmuel meant that Reshut HaYachid is not exceeded above the 10 tefachim. So the Gemara here, and we turn the page to 7b, Ela de'en Reshut HaRabim lemala ma'asara. So there is another interpretation of Shmuel. They said that the airspace in the public domain, it's only if exceeds 10 tefachim. So maybe he said it's just mekom ptur, but that's also impossible. Why? Because matnitini, it's a clear Mishnah that said later in page 100a, they said it nana zorek arba amot bakotel, if someone throw in a public domain and that item gets stuck in the wall, so it's something that glues, so something that you throw it and it's like a magnet, it's boom, it's attached. Mm-hmm. So that's what Rashi said. So if it's really glued, it's attached למעלה מ10 טפחים כזורק באוויר. So if it reach above the 10 טפחים, it's like nothing. It's like you reach the airspace because it's מקום פטור. למטה מ10 טפחים, if you reach below the 10 טפחים, כזורק בארץ. It's like it's reaching הנחה. It's like landed in a public domain, and therefore he is obligated because he is like transferring 4 amot in Reshut Arbim. And what we learn from this Mishnah, that the airspace of public domain, it's considering as public domain up to 10 Tefachim. And above the 10 Tefachim, it's already Mekom Ptur. So Shmuel doesn't need to teach us this. So they said, Ela Carmelit. So the word of Shmuel, it's purposely said about Carmelit. What's about to come to teach us? The En Carmelit Lemala Masara, that the air above the ground of Carmelit, it's not considering a Carmelit. So it means the Carmelit hold up to the 10 and not above that. And then they Ve'akilu Barabanan. So what's the reason that the rabbis are all the idea of Hotzaa, of carrying, that we said that it's only rabbinic because by the Torah it's Mekom Ptur. So I said that's the reason why the sages make it lenient, Mikulei Reshut HaYachid Mikulei Reshut HaRabim. So therefore it's one of the leniency in both in private and a public domain. Mikulei Reshut HaYachid, the reason that we lean in the private domain, the Mekom Arba'a, that if they have the size of 4 Tefachim on 4 Tefachim, 4 times 4, right? Hudave Carmelit. So that's what we call that place Carmelit, Ve'ilo. But if it doesn't have 4 by 4, Mekom Ptur Be'al Ma'u. It's just considering a general Mekom Ptur. So Rashi here will explain, so therefore, place that they have 4 by 4, like head of the pillar or head of the some type of wall, even that it's below the 10 Tefachim from the ground, you can carry from public domain to private domain and vice versa. So he said, Umikule Reshut HaRabim, it's also lenient in a public domain. Why? The Ad Asarat Tefachim Udav Carmelit, because we all up to the 10 Tefachim, it's considering Carmelit. Aval Lemala Masarat Tefachim. However, if it's above the 10 Tefachim, Lo Avya Carmelit. So it means that Carmelit is the same as the public domain. So the same way as the public domain, we say that the air above the 10 Tefachim, it's considering Reshut HaRabim. So from the whole din, the Gemara said that the Carmelit, it's applied to a place that is below than 4 by 4, and it's Mikule, it's more lenient in a private domain. It means that the public domain, it's even a place that is a place 4 by 4. For example, imagine you have a pillar that is a 9 Tefachim above ground, right? And people use it to carry torch on their shoulders, just as an example. That's later the Gemara explained. So anyway, they said here, Gufa. Now we zip in. Amar Rav Gidl Amar Rav Yechia Bar Yosef Amar Rav, Bait she'en tocho asara, a house that doesn't have the 10 Tefachim, vekeruyo, and the ceiling mashlimo la'asara, and the ceiling added to the 10 in order to make it a Reshut HaYachid, a private domain. So as far as carrying, that's the halacha. Al gago, if you talk about the top, the ceiling, above the roof, mutar latel bekulo, you can carry any place you want to. Betocho, but inside the house, el metaltelino be'arba amot. So explain that inside the house, we only in a 4 amot can carry, but other than that, not. Amar Abaye, so the Gemara Eden said, Abaye said, Vim chakak por arba. If you go inside the house and you dig in 4 by 4, so you dig in 4 by 4, so veishlimol asara. So now all this space that we said that the ceiling takes, it's taking by digging down. So that's because from the ground level until the bottom of the place that he digs, it's altogether 10 Tefachim. Mutar latel bekulo. Not only in that spot, you can carry in all that house. Why? My tama. Why? Inside the place that he digs, we understand, because it's 4 by 4. So it's a private domain. But why you're allowed to carry an entire house? So he said, so Abai explained, Have chorei Reshut HaYachid. So it's like you hold that someone in his private domain, he's taking a wall and he puts some spot like a hole there. V'chorei Reshut HaYachid Reshut HaYachid amo. And if someone did it in his private domain, it's considering as a private domain. So therefore, the entire house around that 4 by 4, it's all considering as part of the Reshut HaYachid. The Itma will bring a source. Chorei Reshut HaYachid. If you take a wall in the private domain, that they carry some spots, some airspace, some holes in those. כרשות היחיד דמו. So those holes is considering as a private. חוגרי רשות הרבים. If there are walls that standing around the public domain, and then it's below the 10 Tefachim, so it's a מחלוקת, it's a different opinion. אביי אומר כרשות הרבים דמו. So that's Rabbi hold that because why? Because people in the public domain hiding some of their stuff there. So even they have 4x4, you hold it the same din as Reshut Harabim. The Rashba also hold that way. Rava Ama Omer Lav Kirshut Harabim Damu. It's not considering as a public domain because it's a if they have 4x4, it's like Carmelite. And if it doesn't have 4x4, it's Mekom Ptur, right? So all talk about some hole that it's above ground with 3 Tefachim, because out of that it's not the same. It's everyone agree that it's a public domain. אמר לרבא לאביי, לדידך דאמרת, חורי רשות הרבים כרשות הרבים דמו, מה ישנה מאה? So according to what you said, that the whole, the public domain is considering a public domain, so what's the difference between what we learn, Dichiat Rav Dimi Amar, when Rav Dimi came from Israel to Baron, he said, Rabbi Yochanan, the name of Israel, Rabbi Yochanan, לא נצטרך אלא לקרן זווית, אז בכל רשות הרבים. We just said that we need all of that to say that the Keren Zavit, that corner, is considering as a Carmelite. And according to the way you explain, so if those holes in those different wall around public domain, it's considering a public domain, so even those Keren Zavit, those corners that it's attached to a public domain, it should be a public domain. And therefore, why would the Braita say that Keren Zavit, it's the same as Carmelite? So he said, Abaye responded, he said, Hatam, there, in regard to Keren Zavit, that it's attached to public domain, Lo nichatash mishtei, that it's very inconvenient for people who walk there to walk there as a public domain. So because it's inconvenience, even it's originally public domain, we don't consider it as a public domain. Hacha, but here in regards to those holding in the public domain, nichatash mishtei, because people feel comfortable, it's very convenient to walk there, so therefore we hold it the same as a public domain, and it's part of Reshut Harabim. Then, הזורק חפץ 400 בכותל, if someone, we learn early in the Braita, if someone throw some items high in a 4 Amot, in the public domain, and this item hit the wall, למעלה מ10 טפחים, כזורק באוויר. If it's 10 טפחים above the ground of public domain, so it's considering as someone throw it in the air and is exempt from the sin offering. But למטה מ10 טפחים, if that item hits below the 10 טפחים, כזורק בארץ, so it's like someone who throw it to the ground, that he needs to bring a sin offering. ואבינן בה, so we learn, מהי כזורק בארץ? What does that mean? That's it's like someone throw it to the ground and needs to bring a sin offering. והלונח, because this item did not landed at the 4 mode, because after that item hits that wall, he jumped back to the place that one to throw it. And here we talk about very strict 4 Amot, so he's not considering someone who carried 4 Amot in the public domain. So why we basically ask him to, to be liable? If someone take a big fig, that's different, because that's when he throw it, easily it can stick. So when when that fig hits the wall, it's not going to come back, it stick there. So therefore it's considering as someone who carry 4 Amot in the public domain. Later in 99b there is it's a long discussion over that. If you hold that this hole in the public domain is the same as Reshut Harabim, why need to use this example of heavy big fig? Lokma bitzro v'chefetz. you can hold that someone who's like throw a small item or small bag with a nach bachor. So it's a hole that go to the public domain. So that's more accurate, more often that happen, that you throw something and it stick there. So the Ritva explain that if you tell me that this hole in the public domain it's not considering public domain, so someone will throw it and it stay in those holes, he should be exempt. So you have to therefore the Ritva explained that's the reason we use the example of a heavy fig, that's a situation that it's stuck and really glued to the wall. So there are two explanations here. Abaye explained, number one, zimnin meshanela. So Abaye go different direction. Shanitz ro bechefetz. You cannot compare any items to this fig. Why? The miyadar va'ate, that you throw it and it's come back. Vezimnin meshanela. And sometimes Abaye explain that Rabbi Yochanan hold b'koted red b'chol, that if it's a wall that is have no hole there, so that's a different situation. You don't talk about anything that's stuck in between those spots. Mimai, how do you know it? Midiktan reisha, because we said at the beginning of the Mishnah, zarak lemala ma'asarat tefachim. If someone throws something for Amot in a public domain and he hit above the 10 tefachim from the ground, kezorek ba'avir, it's like someone throw it in the air and in exempt. If you tell me that that speaks about a wall that have some holes there, a mic is zorek ba'avir, right? Why he is exempt like someone hanach bachor, that this item is basically stuck in that spot. You may say that this Mishnah speaks. Even you speak about a wall that have some spots there, but those spots, it's not 4x4. So only if that item landed above asarat tefachim, then he is exempt. But if it's in a 4x4, it's a makom ptur. Ve'amar Rav Yehuda amar Rabbi Chia. So he hold that if someone stand in a public domain, zarak lemala ma'asarat tefachim, someone stand in a public domain and throw above the 10 tefachim, and that item went and stopped in some type of hole, that hole it's not 4x4. So now we're digressing to different opinion between Rabbi Meir and Rabbanan. That's Gemara in Eruvin 11b. The Gemara speaks about the entrance. What happening is you have an entrance, and the entrance the Rabbi Meir savar chokekim lashlim, Rabbanan savar en chokekim lashlim. Well, I'm not the best painter, but I try in my hands to paint what is involved. The Gemara said in Eruvin 11b that what is the obligation to put mezuzah, when in what situation. So they said if you have some because any entrance you don't have to put mezuzah until he has a 4 tefachim in the ground, and you have the length has to be asarat tefachim. So in other words, if you don't have the mashkof, if you don't have that side, so you don't need to put the mezuzah. So the problem here, you see here that this part is triangle, right? So therefore, even the wall around here and the wall, it's a potential to open this and make it as a full regular entrance. But since it doesn't have that, that's the wall, and basically the whole entrance. If you take the entire entrance, so you can go that direction, and that's the entire entrance. So therefore, it's a machloket. Rav Meir hold chokekim lashlim, which means Rav Meir hold that the person can extend it here, and if he extended it, so because it's a potential to do it, so we hold it retroactively that like he has this type of size of entrance, and therefore he obligated the person to put mezuzah. The sages said that even they have a potential to extend it in both ways, right? You cannot hold that that you have the obligation to put only if it's really physically like that, but not if you have the potential. So Rabbi Chia teach us that this type of machloket about the mezuzah with this potential, it's also applied to our discussion, because if we talk about something that they have a hole, if they have a hole in a public domain, so what do you hold? That if that wall have a certain size, if it's a heavy or if it's a thick, so if they have 4x4, but you have a potential to extend it, so you hold the same thing, that chokikim la'ashlim. But so therefore, if someone throw an item, so you need to bring chatat, a sin offering. So alav shma mina bechod elet becho shma mina. So you have to say that the old Mishnah dealing with a situation that is no hole, and therefore that's the way that Rabbi said. So because that it's a wall that it's without hole, without hole, so you have to say that that the whole Mishnah dealing with someone who throw a fig, that heavy fig hit the wall. So if it's above the 10 Tefachim, so it's mekom ptur and is exempt, because the place that this fig landed, it's already mekom ptur. Gufa. אמר רב חיסדא, מי שנעץ קנה ברשות היחיד וזרק ונח על גביו, אפילו גבוה מהאמה חייב, מבלי שרשות היחיד עולה לרקיע. So that's just continuation of what we said earlier. So since we hold the airspace above ground until the heaven, it's no limitation, so therefore if someone throw, even that the heights he exaggerated, he said 100 amot, is still liable. Leima. So what we hold, Rav Chizda de Amar Kerabi, that Rav Chizda hold that someone thrown a kaneh, he is liable. He hold that Rabbi, that he doesn't need, you don't need to have that landed in a place that 4x4. The Tanya, Zarak, if someone throw an item in a public domain, V'nachal gabe ziz kolshu, so if it was like a little small tree that coming out of those big holes, right, that it's not 4x4. But it stopped there, that item stopped there. Ravi mechayev. The Chachamim potrim, Ravi say that the person is liable, and the sages exempt. So, because we see that Rabbi said that he is liable, even that item stop in that little, small tree, it's called in Hebrew ziz, 4x4, alma. So what we derive from that Rabbi hold that in a private domain, Reshut היחיד, לא בעין על מקום 4x4, we don't require 4x4, so you don't need to see that item landed on the place 4x4. So basically, what do you say, that Rav Chizda hold the same as Rabbi? Amar Rabbi answer. We just finished the sugya. It's like 5 lines from the top of page 8. Amar Rabbi, if someone throw an item from a public domain and it stop in that little ziz, in that little tree that coming out, ברשות היחיד, in the private domain, לכולי עלמא לא פליגי דרב חיסדא. Everyone agreed the same as Rav Chizda, that one who throw it is liable because it's not 4x4. Everyone agreed that. You see Rashi explained it at length. אלא הכה, here the difference between Rabbi and Chachamim, this dispute, באילן העומד ברשות היחיד ונופו נוטה לרשות הרבים. Remember we talk about sukkah, situation that Ilan is landed in different location. So you have here the situation that the tree is in a private domain, but venofo, but he is bended to the public domain, which means that his branches, it's extended to a public domain. Vezarak, and someone throw an item from a public domain, venach anofo, and that item stop where? On the branches of the tree, and that's basically the ziz, what we said earlier in the Braita. And in that branch is not such a place for 4x4, but if you talk about the root of the tree, the root of the tree has a 4x4. So he said, דרבי סבר אמרינן שדי נופו בתר עיקרו. So Rabbi hold that you take the branches and you basically hold it the same as the root. Even the branches is just the branches, but you hold it the same as the root, which means that because that branch came from that root, so therefore, because the root is held where in the private domain, and if someone put something and landed on that, is like he landed in the private domain. So therefore, the branches that coming out, if someone throws something and it stops on those branches, he is liable. Why? Because it's like a throw from the public domain to a private domain. So even that item stop on this branch of the tree, that it doesn't have 4x4, but anyway he is chayav, is liable, because if someone is in a private domain, he is obligated even that he is landed in a place 4x4. Rabbanan sovereign, the sages hold, lo amrin al shdei gofo batar ikaro. We don't see that the branches of the tree hold the same as the shoresh, the geza, the foundation. It's only hold at the place that he is. So even the source is in Reshut Yachid, because the branch is in the public domain, so it is exempt. So you see here in conclusion, you have here several explanations in Rashi, and I wish to have the time to elaborate on this Rashi, but one explanation very short, that the branches, the north is the essence, and therefore it's all considering that that's the center, and the other one is the opposite that you hold. And if you remember several dapim ago, several sessions ago, we talked about yad and the body, that the body is in Reshut Yachid and the yad is extended, and how you treat it. In that sense, you have the same situation here with the tree. Since the tree is in Reshut Yachid, in the private domain, but the branch is coming out, so then you treat it as different. That's the basic machloket between Rebbe and Rabbanan. Few halachot. First halacha is from Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 345. Bait she'en betocho asara. Again, I'm not a painter, I just try to illustrate what's involved. This is a house. You see here the ceiling. This is a private domain. And here you have the asara tefachim, the 10 handbreadth. This is the size of the ceiling. So you have here, let's say 8 or 9, and this is fixed to 10. All this area, it's a public domain. So we said, if the height inside the house is less than 10 handbreadth, but the top of the roof is 10 handbreadth of the ground, because you count also that part. So the top of the roof is full-fledged private domain, right? And the inside the house is Carmelit. So if one dug a space, and that space is 4x4 Tefachim, 4x4 handbreadth, so you said that it's inside the house, he increased the height inside the house, and therefore the entire inside the house become a Reshut Yachid. Even the area that he dug out it's more than 3 handbreadth from the walls, right? So that's the Magen Avraham based on the Rosh. First halacha. Another important halacha, we say that Carmelit is not less than 4 Tefachim, and we say that the chorei, the hole of a private domain, and a hole of public domain. So Shulchan Aruch in 345 said that holes in the walls of the public domain, whose opening face in the public domain, and are 3 handbreadths or higher above the ground, are not considered part of the public domain. It's for sure the legal status depends on a height, and the private domain, if there are a walls on the private domain, and those opening face in the private domain have a legal status of a private domain, that's the Shulchan Aruch. Another important halacha we said is the chokekim leashlim. Chokekim leashlim, if you remember, we painted that part, that it can exceed it. So Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 345 said that one who curve out to complete, so one does not curve out and is just imaginary area in order to increase the size of the space. So thereby, after its legal status, the space is we assess the space according to actual size and not to the potential what he can make it bigger. So that's another halakha I'd say about the tree and the branches. It's called Nof and Ikar. So the Rambam in Hilchot Shabbat, Sefer Zmanim, chapter 14, he said Nof ve'ikar. He says if a tree is standing in a private domain and it's going to extend into the public domain, if those branches outside, so he said those are not considered part of the trunk, and they constitute a domain unto themselves, which is basically an exempt domain because it's going the other way. Now, we are going to elaborate much more in Mitzvah Shem tomorrow in the Daf when we're dealing about the size and the person's kavanah. But those of you, I look at your faces, it looks like, you know, a little challenging. You should encourage by knowing that beside of what we said many times, that when you have lefum tzara agra, that the more arduous effort you put in study, the better. You should also encourage to know that in a page from now, 9B and onward, I think that it will be much fun and easy for you to study. So just get the courage, repeat the shiur, and we'll go further with relatively lightly, or even more lightly than you think, from 9B and onward.